Good morning, everyone. I am Tylor-Maria, and I'm a Senior Policy and Data Analyst at Policy and Practice. This morning, I will be setting the policy context behind the localities approach and why so many councils are adopting localities models in their benefit take-up strategy. So this morning, I'll be covering a few important points with you so I can set the backdrop for Randall and Paul. The first is I'll be providing some ongoing coverage on the cost of living crisis and the available support. I'll also be speaking about the cost of living crisis and its impact on the council. Then I'll be spending the rest of the time to talk about the extra spending associated with unclaimed benefits and how data can be used to help. Next slide, please. So as Janet has already mentioned at the beginning of this presentation, you might know us from our ongoing policy work, and we've been featured in some really great publications over the past months as we've covered the cost of living crisis. On the left-hand side, you'd see the work where we were featured in the CSJ, or Center for Social Justice report on Target, where we looked more at the impact of the rises in the cost of living and the impact of cost of living payments on different household types. And on the right-hand side, you'll also see our most recent work that was featured in the Times, our publication called Putting the Universal in Universal Credit, where we spoke about how more people are eligible for universal credit than you might think. Over the past months, we've been following the cost of living crisis to provide you with up-to-date data analysis on how this will impact councils and households on the lowest income so that you can help to inform your strategy and support more and more residents in your area with targeted and much needed support. Next slide. So over the past couple of months, we've been doing a few forecasting analyses on over 114,000 low-income households across the UK to get a better sense of the impact of the spring and autumn budgets and all the policy changes that are set to go into effect this year. So we've recently rerun this analysis within the past couple of days to understand the impact of benefits upgrading, the rise in national living wage, and also how that stacks against the new cost of living payments, the loss in the energy rebate, the continued high CPI inflation, as well as the ongoing freeze in local housing allowance and the rises to council tax liability. And this fresh hot off the press analysis has shown us that low-income households are still expected to be about £81 worse off in April than they were in February and November. We found that even though there have been quite positive changes that households are going to be seeing from April 2023, these changes don't necessarily outweigh some of the supports that have been taken away, like the energy rebate, as well as things not necessarily changing, like the local housing allowance staying the same, as well as rises in council tax. We found that households on average are worse off and are still going to need support going forward. Next slide. So to dive into this analysis a bit more, you can see on the right-hand side, there's a graph showing how much better or worse off low-income households are compared to February 2022. So we can see the first chart, or the first bar there, shows that on average, households in November were only £12 better off in November than compared to this time last year, when the impact in the cost of living was really starting to take effect. This same household is set to be £81 per month worse off compared to February 2022. And just to put this into context, this is only one broken appliance. This is, one extra trip to a pharmacy. This is a very small amount that households are finding themselves. This amount, it's a very large amount actually that households are trying to figure out how they can make their ends meet without having this additional amount of money. Next slide. This graph here also shows this analysis and how different household types will feel the impact of the cost of living crisis very differently. So on the right-hand side, you'll see the average income after costs following October and April, and the cost of living payments and how that will impact different household types over the different time periods. And we'll see here that the income of a couple with children is projected to fall by £138 a month from April compared to February 2022. We also find that 10% of working age households won't have enough income to meet household costs in April. And in particular, single people are oftentimes the ones that are feeling the impact of the rises in the cost of living most strongly, where single households are projected to 15% of single households are projected to not have enough income to meet their costs from April. Next slide. But overall, we find that the cost of living payments will make a difference to households. And this difference does actually vary depending on the household type. So we know that the cost of living payments are being paid to people on universal credit, on personal independence payment, attendance allowance, and people over state pension age, and those getting winter fuel payments. On the right-hand side, again, you'll see another graph showing the percentage of households in negative budgets before and after the cost of living payments in April. You'll see the magenta bars are showing the number of households in a negative budget before the payment. A household in a negative budget is a household that doesn't have enough money to meet their essential costs, such as food, water, or clothing. And the green bars show the percentage of households in these negative budgets after they receive these payments. And we see here that for all households, those that do receive the cost of living payments are more able to meet their essential costs overall as a cohort. So the number in negative budgets reduces from 25% to 10%. And we'll also see this especially for singles, where flat rate payments actually go a bit further for these households because it's just smaller household sizes. And we see there that the proportion of single people in negative budgets reduces from 42% to 15%. So we see there's quite, that cost of living payments do make quite a large difference for households that do receive them. Next slide. But overall, this policy context, although there is hope and these payments will help, we see overall that the cost of living crisis has had a huge impact in the number of households that are finding themselves in crisis. And this has impacts on the council as well. So councils are noting more demand for housing support, more people in work seeking help, and there's a higher demand on services where local charities and organizations are seeing decreases in cash and physical donations, yet an increase in people asking for food and fuel vouchers as more and more people are struggling to make their ends meet. Now, with so many households feeling the pinch of the rise in energy costs and fuel costs, the role of local government to support residents in crisis is even more important. Now, this is really where we start to kick off into why the localities model is so important. One way that a council or councils can begin to approach the rise in residents in crisis is through increasing benefit take-up through targeted support. And the localities model is this one way that local authorities we're seeing can actually begin to do this in a very effective and efficient way. Next slide. So what is this localities model? I've pulled together a working definition that Paul and Randall will be able to build on for the duration of this presentation. The localities model operates at the postcode or ward level. It uses data to identify trends in need, poverty, debts, vulnerabilities, and benefit take-up. And this can all then be used for the targeting of benefits, local government support, community assets, and communications. And all of this data can enable partnerships between local authorities, community partners, and organizations. Now, there's quite a particular power, I think, behind the localities approach. Tons of really great advantages to adopting this approach within a council. And I'll highlight two, and I'll tell you about them, but realistically, I want to pass the baton off to Paul and to Randall so that they can actually show you what this looks like in practice. But the two main points that I'll pull out for the remaining bit of my time with you today is that the localities approach will help or can help to shape targeted intervention and communications and encourage collaborative support from other organizations in areas where support is most needed. And it is an efficient and effective poverty cost avoidance strategy by helping people to take up all that they're eligible for, and it creates public savings. Next slide. So the first point I mentioned, the localities approach can help to shape targeted intervention and communications. It does so by using administrative data, in particular our low-income family tracker platform. Yeah, When using our low-income family tracker platform, you can use administrative data to highlight which areas are likely to need support and aren't claiming the benefits that they're eligible for. And it does this by showing the rates of benefit eligibility and benefits take-up by ward. And you can see that on the map and then direct your support and interventions to those areas based on what you're seeing in benefit trends. And secondly, you can also use administrative data to highlight areas where households are most likely to be in need. Specifically, you can identify areas of high poverty, debt, carers in debt, places where there are tons of highly fuel inefficient properties. And just in general, you can highlight the areas that are at high risk, so then you can direct your support to those areas. And secondly, next slide, and my last few slides, is that there are extra spending costs associated with unclaimed benefits, and the localities model allows councils to actually direct support and increase take-up, thus reducing the amount of public expenditure associated with unclaimed benefits. One of our colleagues, Juliet, has compiled a really interesting literature review, which you can read up on this slide, or the next two slides, that highlights that if you're looking at specifically pension credit and potentially other benefits, there's a potential for public savings of about £4 billion if people are to take up all of the pension credit that they're entitled to. And this £4 billion of savings is much more than the £2.2 billion that it would cost the Treasury and benefits expenditure if everyone took up pension credit. Sufficient to say that by increasing benefits take-up, you're actually reducing other spending that would have come along the lines when people are not claiming what they are eligible for. Next slide, and my last slide. If you're more of a visual learner, my colleague put together a really lovely graph to demonstrate the relationship between increasing benefits take-up and then reducing the need for social care. And you can insert poverty cost avoidance here as well. That although there isn't this very neat linear relationship between increasing benefits take-up and reducing the need for social care or additional poverty cost spending, you can see very clearly here that by increasing benefits take-up, you're improving living standards, you're reducing social exclusion, and improving physical and mental health for the person actually taking up that benefit. And then by effect, you are reducing the need for any additional public spending that the government or local authority would have to do because this person did not have enough to meet their needs. And all of that is to say that by investing in the localities model and increasing benefits take-up in these specific areas, you are then reducing any additional or a lot of additional costs associated with not taking up the benefit. So it's quite advantageous and helpful not only for the council and the larger ecosystem in which people find themselves in, but it's also helpful for the individual. There's tons of knock-on effects that happen when councils look and use data to identify need and target those needs to those households. That is my side of the presentation, and I will hand it back over to you, Janet, and then to Randall and Paul, who will put this into action and show how this is currently being used across the UK.